It was more than 2 months violent protest, which culminated in the sense that finally Prime Minister Hasina Wajid stepped down and then fled the country. What was the reason? We used to hear that Bangladesh was making strides in economy. It was going very well. There was industrial revolution.
Was just a spark. It was the
Was
same.
just a spark.
It was the same spark. If you remember in Libya, it was a vendor, cart vendor. Something sparks it off, and then that carries momentum. The job quota, yes, it was important, but not as important as the things that happened later. This is the same thing that happened to Sheikh Mujib, our father, 1975. Same thing, because the same dictatorial attitude.
This was already cooking up, I think, for last couple of years. There was a huge class gap, almost 80 to 90% poverty.
Whenever there is any mass protest movement, any violent activity in Bangladesh, Indian media becomes active. And then they start leveling baseless allegations against Pakistan, that Pakistan was behind Jamaat-e-Islami.
This was an indigenous movement. This was a protest against a repressive regime, right? And it culminated in her ouster.
And no role by Pakistan at all.
Not at all.
The role by the Indian establishment into, as you mentioned, that she used to get command from New Delhi. So with her resignation now, will it be considered that there is an end of the Indian involvement into the political affairs of Bangladesh?
Basically, Indian intelligence, Indian businesses, and Indian diplomats were actually calling the shots. So there was a lot of control on Bangladesh, including security policy. India played a very dirty role. Half of blame should go to India, who ill-advised her and then created this chaos, and then it resulted into her fall.
The Bangladeshi is a natural anti-Indian. So don't try and put the Pakistani flag.
Naturally anti-India.
Indian.
Precisely tell us the future of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations despite these all turbulent times that Bangladesh is facing.
2 countries, 1 nation.
2 countries, 1 nation. Beautiful answer. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, situation in Bangladesh is explosive. Political situation is fluid in Bangladesh after weeks of deadly and violent protest. And what happened today that Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajid finally stepped down and fled the country. This shows that the power by the people, the power of the student, it was so detrimental, it was so forceful that finally forced the most powerful Prime Minister of South Asian country, Bangladesh, to step down and then flee the country. What exactly happened and what was the background of the student protest, which was followed by the general protest, mass disobedience movement against Bangladeshi Prime Minister, why she was so much close to New Delhi, what role Indian establishment played with Hasina Wajid in destabilizing Bangladesh, and when everything was happening, it was alleged by the Indian media that Pakistan was behind these deadly violent protests in Bangladesh. To discuss this all, we are joined by 2 very eminent analysts. One, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, who doesn't need any introduction, very, very senior political security defense analyst. Ikram Sehgal Saab, very warm welcome to Program Insight. And we are also joined by renowned and very seasoned defense and security analyst, Brigadier Retired Waqar Hasan. Brigadier Retired Waqar Hasan Saab, very warm welcome to Program Insight.
Good to be here.
Yes. Ikram Saab, please tell our viewers, although I briefly made an introduction that it was more than 2 months violent protest, which culminated in the sense that finally Prime Minister Hasina Wajid stepped down and then fled the country. What was the reason? We used to hear that Bangladesh was making strides in economy. It was going very well. There was industrial revolution. So many things were good. But all of a sudden, students and then public also became angry and started mass disobedience movement. Ikram Saab.
Mateen Saab, the main thing is that you can never keep repression on constantly. One day, somebody has to say goodbye to repression. Now, the job quota that we keep talking about was just a spark. It was the same.
Just a spark.
It was the same spark. If you remember in Libya, it was a vendor, cart vendor, right? So it actually what happens is that you have a whole slate of grievances, and something sparks it off, and then that carries momentum. And therefore, the job quota, yes, it was important, but not as important as the things that happened later. And mainly, it was a protest against the brutal repression that had been carrying on for some time, and particularly during this actual event when police fired into the crowds, right? And police fired into the crowds, and there were hundreds of deaths. You know, the deaths have all not been reported.
It's reported approximately near 300 deaths.
Yes, but even then, according to my information, there were many more deaths than that, right? But the point is that once such spark sets off the series of events, I think that is the thing, etc. Then the Bangladesh government, for time got some time by this thing, etc. But they did not stop at that. They again went and arrested the students in hospital. They took the student leaders out of hospital, arrested them, and they thought that that was the end of the affair. But obviously, there were more to come, and what you have seen is just a culmination of the entire gamut of protest that has been going on, and people wanting to rid themselves of this increasingly dictatorial this thing. By the way, Mateen Saab, this is the same thing that happened to Sheikh Mujib, our father, 1975. Same thing, because the same dictatorial attitude, the one-party state that she was virtually made it into a one-party state, right? And therefore, it ultimately, of course, it was led by the army at that time, a faction of the army, not even the army itself. But it ultimately, it did say her ouster took place because of that.
So, Ikram Sehgal Saab, whenever there is any mass protest movement, any violent activity in Bangladesh, Indian media becomes active. And then they start leveling baseless allegations against Pakistan, that Pakistan was behind Jamaat-e-Islami, the political party in Bangladesh that has been banned recently and declared terrorist organization. And Pakistani High Commission in Dhaka was supporting student protests. Such obnoxious, baseless, and senseless allegations against Pakistan, although these things, you will put light on it, these all developments and movements were indigenous.
You're absolutely right, Mateen Saab. First of all, Indian media always mixes fact with fabrication, right? And this is part of their fake propaganda that they carry out all the time. If you see Kashmir, and you see all the the various things that they've done against Pakistan, the false flag operations, etc. They're very good at it. It's a Hollywood creation, a Bollywood creation, right? So
Bollywood creation, good word.
The point is that you have to take that into light. But now, let me tell you, there's no doubt that there must be some sort of linkages, etc., of nature, which happens within countries. Like we will have linkages in India with our Muslim League, etc. But the point is, this was very much an indigenous movement. It was actually a negation of the narrative that India had built up from 1971 and which culminated in 2021, when the 50 years, when they had a whole year of anti-Pakistan propaganda there.
Exactly.
Right? The youth are not going to buy it. They will buy it for some time. And I, for example, wrong in one thing. I thought that the protest will take place in the outlying areas, may not take place in Dhaka, right? Because, Dhaka University students, the Indian influence there, etc., etc. But that is exactly where the real problem started. right? So the point is that one cannot wish away by fabricating lies, etc. This was an indigenous movement. This was a protest against a repressive regime, right? And it culminated in her ouster.
And no role by Pakistan at all.
Not at all. I mean, even I would say even if Pakistan had tried, I think that would have been counterproductive. Frankly speaking, if somebody in Pakistan had tried, I said, for God's sake, lay off. You will fall into the Indian trap. It is something. Listen to one thing. I'll tell you. The Bangladeshi is a natural anti-Indian. So don't try and put the Pakistani flag.
Naturally anti-India.
Indian. So don't put
the public. I heard, and you will endorse my opinion. I heard that public loves still Pakistan.
You go to a cricket match. Why don't they allow flags into a cricket match when Pakistan is playing? This is the only country in the world that does not allow flags to come into cricket matches. Right? Because when Pakistan is playing, right? So just consider this. Why don't they allow flags to come into the stadium when Pakistan is playing?
Ikram Saab, today Bangladeshi Army Chief General Waqaruzzaman addressed the nation, and he had all the opportunity to take over the country, but he did not, right? So country is virtually under his control. There will be an interim government which will look after all the administrative matters at the national level. How you see the role played by current Bangladeshi Army Chief, and how long he will continue to play his role in stabilizing the situation?
Not many people know that Waqaruzzaman is a relation of Hasina Wajid, right? His wife is the daughter of Lieutenant General Mustafizur Rahman, who was the Chief of Army Staff of Bangladesh from 1997 to 2000.
Prominent army officer.
Yes. So the point is that, he was a hand-picked person from Hasina Wajid. She was also the principal staff officer of the Defense Forces Command, which virtually was control. Even the Chief of Army Staff is there in name only, but the Defense Forces Command actually controls the Chief of Army Staff, the PSO to the Defense Forces controls the thing, to the PSO to the Prime Minister. He was forced into this situation by the younger lot of the army.
Okay.
The younger lot of the army.
Very important point you are making. Very, very important point. Okay.
Remember, the influence of India starts after the lieutenant colonel level.
After lieutenant colonel level.
They cannot control all the people who are selected into the army. That would be vast. How can you go and, when you're recruiting people, find out if that person is anti-Indian, has some influence of Islam, etc., whatever, right? So the point is, it goes up to, I think, when he becomes lieutenant colonel, and then he starts going to higher colleges, higher defense colleges, postings, staff, etc. It is at that time that those on merit and with not anti-Indian stance are allowed to go up in the army. So you'll find very few brigadiers or major generals, almost none of them who are, say, anti-Indian. Some excellent officers have been passed over. People who stood first all their lives, whether in the Bangladesh Military Academy, whether in the staff college, whether the higher defense college, went to this thing, etc., they go up beyond the brigadier's rank. So they let us say these senior officers are very much people handpicked by India to ensure that there is no anti-Indian feeling in that level. But how do you control the majors of the army who control the troops, who refuse to fire?
There's company commanders and these whole exactly on a commanding positions, true.
And battalion commanders. How do you control them when they are supposed to fire into the crowds? They were flatly told, they said, we will not fire into the crowds. And we do not do the same thing that the police have done. The police were ruthless, brutal. Let me tell you very frankly, The police were ruthless and brutal.
This was
And
all done by the civilian law enforcement agencies, and at
Yeah.
junior level, I mean, major and lieutenant colonel, they did not fire. So finally tell us that what is the political future of Bangladesh? Do you think the political future, which will come into power in future, will resolve the issues and will meet the demands that have been made by the public and particularly students?
there are two things still to go. One is the president. He was a puppet of Hasina Wajid. Right.
President will also he will also go.
Yeah. And the other one is the chief of army staff.
General Karuzaman.
Yeah, I do not think he will last. Right. This is my own personal opinion. I will not think he will last. And that is because he has been towing the line. He was recently, only 3-4 months ago, and there was no doubt that he was being groomed for this. And the only reason he was being groomed for this, that he was absolutely loyal to her, right? And he has done her the biggest favor by allowing her to leave the country, unharmed. Just before.
Yes, that is taken, and that precisely tell us why India has been so dominant on Bangladesh. Its military, as you said, different ministries, top bureaucracy, foreign policy, everything. India used to dominate everything, and Bangladeshi people were quite upset. They were irritated over massive Indian interference. A precise and to the point answer.
Yeah, because they had moved in their people into every ministry.
Indians,
every ministry, particularly the foreign service, I mean, I have had talked with diplomats who were afraid to talk, afraid to talk in their own this thing. They would say, let's go for tea somewhere outside, a cafe or something like that. They would not talk in their own offices, right? And obviously, I will not go and mention names and things like that. But let me tell you, the vast majority of the diplomats were very unhappy with the situation, right? And you will see changes, but you will not see many changes, because I will say a vast majority were Bangladeshi nationalists, but they were not pro-Hasina Wajid.
Precisely tell us the future of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations despite these all turbulent times that Bangladesh is facing.
2 countries, 1 nation.
2 countries, 1 nation. Beautiful answer.
Because let me tell you one thing. This is exactly what the Qaid talked about. The Qaid, 1946, Sarwardi, Fazlul Haq, and Abul Hashim went to Qaid and said, let us have a greater Bangladesh, which will have, not Bangladesh at that time, greater Bengal, which will have Assam and Calcutta port. The British manipulated the vote in such a way that because greater Bengal was Muslim majority, greater Bengal, I'm talking about Assam, etc. Right? So they could not afford that the Calcutta port goes away. So the British manipulated it in such a way, they said even if a few people vote in West Bengal was Hindu majority, there was no doubt about it. If they vote West Bengal, then we will not have one Bengal, we will have to divide East Bengal and West Bengal into 2 portions like it existed. So if that had happened, that would, because Sarwardi, Fazlul Haq and Abul Hashim said to Qaid, and the Qaid agreed and allowed them for a few months to broach this idea. They said, okay, we are still 1 nation. We may be 2 countries, but we are still 1 nation.
1 nation. Wonderful. Thank you so much indeed, Ikram Sehgal Saab, who said that and who hoped and expressed optimism that in future Bangladesh will witness political stability, and as far as bilateral relations are concerned, relations are excellent. It's 1 nation, 2 country. And there is always an Indian propaganda regarding involvement of Pakistan in internal affairs. There have been no such truth. Once again, thank you so much, Ikram Sehgal Saab. Despite your busy schedule, you spared time and spoke to Program Insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Today, whatever is happening in Bangladesh, that is the headline in the global media. And after weeks of deadly and violent protests, Bangladeshi Prime Minister Hasina Wajid has resigned. There are so many angles to the situation in current Bangladeshi situation. Bangladeshi Army Chief General Zaman made a televised address and said an interim government will look after the administrative matters of the country. Prime Minister of Bangladesh fled the country. However, in the backdrop of these all, there have been unfortunate Indian media reports which allege that Pakistan was secretly playing a game in Bangladesh, supporting students, supporting Jamaat-e-Islami. But before discuss this, first we would like to ask senior analyst who has joined us, Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan. Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan, sir, very warm welcome to Program Insight. What happened today? Please tell our viewers that what was the background of what ultimately happened today, which forced Bangladeshi Prime Minister Hasina Wajid to step down and finally flee the country. Brigadier Waqar, sir.
Apparently, it looks like that basically it was the quota protest which finally resulted in fall of Sheikh Hasina. But I have a different view because this was already cooking up, I think, for last couple of years. And the fall is from absolute power to absolute crisis. Now, you look at Sheikh Hasina's control on bureaucracy, on military, on judiciary, businesses, and I think there were some concocted figures also given regarding economy that was going at such and such. It was basically helping the elite, which was basically Awami League, And if you look at quota system, again, it was benefiting, Awami League workers or let's say whatever their activists. So one is that there was a huge gap, and then was definitely she was more becoming like an autocrat. And this was going to be her, I think, third term in succession. And before that, I was in Bangladesh in 97, 98. And then she was the prime minister. We were there for a course and we made some very good friends. But good thing, I think, about the people and the students is that they have stood for a cause and they were very resolute. And even I think military was forced finally to call the shots and tell her to leave. So I think the problems were already simmering under. There was a huge class gap, almost 80 to 90% poverty figures
80 to
in Bangladesh.
90% poverty, that is
80 to 90%. So I would say the 10% were basically consuming the resources and whatever economic progress. And we have seen the scene, on the streets of Dhaka, still the cycle rickshaw is being pulled. But unfortunately, the way India has, I think, played in inciting this crackdown, if you analyze, so I would partially also blame Indian agencies and Indian advisors who were telling her to go for crackdown. Started, from, let's say, police initially, which is definitely subservient to her. Then you had the rapid action battalions, which are led by the army officers, or basically these are special police officers. Then came the Bangladesh border guards, which is like our rangers. And then they also put the military in front because there was some firing by the military. And then I think Chief was, I think day before yesterday, he held a meeting with the officers in Dhaka, and they told him that probably we have to save the nation and country instead of saving the government, because Bangladesh may, land up like what happened in Myanmar. It could be civil war. So good thing is that sense has prevailed. And if you look at the response after that, what people are doing, the way they have entered the Prime Minister's house, they're enjoying having a feast there, and they are targeting, monuments of Sheikh Mujib. And today there's the news that she's probably landed in Agartala, where the entire conspiracy started. Yeah.
Notorious city, Waqar of notorious city in the history. True.
Yeah, definitely, because if you and unfortunately here people at time give a lot of examples of Sheikh Mujib being an ultimate leader. But if you look at his legacy, it was basically a one-party rule. And why he was assassinated just 4 years after the independence in 1975. There's a huge question mark on what was happening, what was his family doing. But all told, I think we pray that Bangladesh stabilizes, because the students are now going to put a lot of demands. And in these demands, how the army is going to work to form a, let's say, interim government. So there are, I think, a lot of ifs and buts.
So please highlight precisely, I know you're quite busy, the role by the Indian establishment into, as you mentioned, that she used to get command from New Delhi. So, with her resignation now, will it be considered that there is an end of the Indian involvement into the political affairs of Bangladesh?
Yeah, if you look at, there was a movement already going on for last 1 year was India out. Initially started from Maldives and then Bangladesh. Why it was happening? Basically, Indian intelligence, Indian businesses, and Indian diplomats were actually calling the shots, and people are fed up with, the interference. Even if you look at the garment industry, ready-made garments, they are
It
produced
was
in
the biggest
Bangladesh, and
industry.
yeah, they are
Exactly.
then taken by the big shots in India, and then they are maybe sold in the international market. So there was a lot of control on Bangladesh, including security policy, including. So I think if you look at the last month, how Hasina Wajid, then Sheikh Hasina, started crackdown. I think it was advised by the Indian advisors and intelligence, especially RAW. There were some, I think, pictures on social media that some of the RAW officers were sitting in the conferences for national security. I don't know how far they are true. And if you look at where she's landed and the wrath of Awam and people, it indicates that probably that was the country which was instigating violence. And India also never wanted it to actually stabilize, because they would like, economic figures to come down. And then they could tell Indians that probably, because there was definitely a trend that Bangladesh was the fastest growing economy in South Asia. But all told, I think India played a very dirty role. And now if you look at perception, day before yesterday, I think yesterday, their ex-foreign minister, deputy foreign minister was saying that, it will be stabilized and Sheikh Hasina is a great leader, and still Indian media is crying hoarse. But unfortunately, I would blame half of blame should go to India, who ill-advised her and then created this chaos, and then it resulted into her fall.
Just say in 2 sentences, what is the political future of Bangladesh now? In the future, do you expect stability to return?
Yeah, so far I think army has played well because and they were under pressure. And if you look at yesterday, Awami League then took out Chhatra League, which is their student wing, and they put them to confront, the students. And then the army came in between, and they didn't fire. I think so. Already there was a lot of pressure on the army chief. Yeah, because it could have resulted into civil war. So it is very clear now that people have a sigh of relief. Definitely, the prestige of BNP, Jamaat Islami, which was declared, terrorist organization day before yesterday by Awami League and Sheikh Hasina.
Well.
I think they are also good. And then there are ulama who came out, doctors, engineers. You had professors and teachers joining, and then there were parents, of course. If you look at the carnage, it's not 200 or 300 killed. Unfortunately, if you look at social media reports, it's more than 1,000 shaheed, and maybe 20,000 are injured. So it's a huge number, and so many families are affected. So I would say that army has to then, I think, walk a tightrope and then gather the political parties. So far, it's going to be an interim government. But there's a lot of, I think, effect on the economy. They have to stabilize civil services, transport, and have to start running Bangladesh in good order. But there's going to be a lot of pressure from the students, because they feel that it was their, revolution, which basically ousted, and nobody could even think 1 month back that Sheikh Hasina could be ousted like that. So I think still the chips are down. Let's see how, it moves
Just
ahead.
1 sentence. Students are also irritated by massive Indian involvement. There was anti-Indian sentiments among the youth.
Yeah, and especially the remarks by Sheikh Hasina. She said that they were Rajakars. Rajakar is, almost a derogatory term. Rajakars were basically people from Al-Badr and Al-Shams who fought with Pakistan Army against
referred to that.
Yeah, so this, I think, taunt was taken where it became actually one of the rallying points. That why, and then they were even pro-Pakistan slogans, and we wish them well. And we've seen Pakistan flag fluttering in Dhaka, which is, I think, a very good sight. And I'm sure the raw head honchos must be, sitting with Dole and thinking what has happened to them in last 1 week.
Sure.
So they should do some soul searching, and I would, I think, appeal to the Kashmiri youth also to look at the power of the youth. Now, in case you want, freedom, you have to
previously Sri Lanka, Bakar Sahib, then now Dhaka, and then exactly you are advising to the young youth of the Kashmir that they should not give up their struggle. True?
Exactly. And inshallah, Pakistan will be there. And we hope that they draw some strength from here. And you've seen the Palestinians fighting for their right, and Kashmiris. And today we had Yom Istisar, and I'm sure Kashmiris are listening to what's being said from Islamabad and this side of line of control. So I'm sure, inshallah, the sun will rise for the freedom in occupied Kashmir as well. And we wish Bangladeshis, a happy future, a stable future, where they can definitely lead their lives according to the wishes of the people of Bangladesh.
Thank you so much indeed, Brigadier Retired Waqar Hasan Saab, for speaking to program Insight, despite your busy schedule. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.